I love shocking people who have outdated opinions. I see it quite often sitting around these various panels for the last 27 years. And we're still having the same conversations, you know. No, I think we're doing a good enough job as we are, don't you? No, that's why I'm asking the question.
In them 30 years, what's been the biggest achievement?
We've never made anybody redundant. We've never put anybody on short time. Nobody's ever had less than their standard basic working week in their pay packet. British still can't say that, and they turn me down.
Can you pinpoint anything that went wrong?
Oh yeah.
How you dealt with it then versus how you would deal with it now?
I paid to bury his dad, but he was claiming for his dad for caring for him for 38 hours a week.
Oh my God.
I'm Andrea Wilson. I'm Director of Hone All Precision in Leighton Buzzard, and we are a precision machining business specialising in deep hole boring, deep hole drilling, honing and CNC turning. So effectively we make tubes of various shapes, sizes and configurations for pretty much every industry.
Okay, and what is it that you do?
I call myself the dog's body director really, because I do a little bit of everything.
Right.
You know, basically as an SME, I mean, you know, when we started 30 years ago, there were sort of 6 of us. And over those 30 years, I've pretty much done every job, including manual honing, which I hated with a vengeance.
Yep.
Mainly because I'm short and the oil then ran up my arms, not down my arms. But if a job had to be done, it had to be done. But generally now I sort of oversee the general running of the business, sales, marketing, finance, you know, leading and guiding the leadership team, trying to get them to elevate themselves to take that role so that all I have to do is watch them succeed. But at the minute, just sort of helping them get to that point.
Okay, so let's go back before Hernal.
Yep.
Where did you grow up? What did you want to be when you were older?
Council kid, born and bred. Really sort of underprivileged childhood, we shall say. Born in Rotherham and grown up around Rockingham, Wingfield and Greensborough. My parents were both very sort of poorly, pretty much on and off, or my mum and my stepdad. So I learned to work at a very young age to make sure that I could have the things that I would really like, not the things that I could only have. So I probably started earning around about 12, then started washing dishes in my auntie's cafe and then babysitting for her afterwards on a Saturday night. I did some awful jobs, carpet overlock stitching and, you know, sneezing out carpet fibres for days on end. My favourite was probably bar work.
Yep.
Bar work, particularly Greensborough Working Men's Club, because that was entertaining because you could actually work behind a bar under 18 back then.
Yep.
I don't know if you can now in a club. And I wanted to go to uni, but there was no chance we could afford it. But when it came to leaving school with GCSEs, I think it was GCSEs back then, I didn't really know what I wanted to do. So I went and did A-levels, biggest mistake of my life, despite the fact I got 5 A-levels. Because everybody then I went for a job with said, why didn't you go to university? Why did you do A-levels? So it was really difficult to get a job. So I ended up selling dodgy alarm systems for a while.
What was dodgy about them?
Just that they were very expensive and some of the sales tactics I disagreed with, hence the reason I didn't last long. But I was very good at what we did. But back then in those days, you used to do the selling in people's homes, etc. And I hated every minute. But it did give me a good background into what to do and what not to do when you're actually talking to people, selling to people.
Okay.
So I saw this job advertised in the local paper for a sales representative for Lenska's Clamping Tools, or as they say when they answer the phone, Lenska's Clamping Tools, because they're in Barnsley. And I ticked every box apart from one. They wanted somebody 25 and over, and I was 21. So I wrote them a letter and said why. I can do this, I can do that. I've worked for 12 years doing various customer-facing roles. And a lovely, lovely old chap called John Torr, who was once sales director of Plaxton's buses, rang me up and said, come on, I'll talk to you. I'll give you an interview. And then Derek Gulbranson I met, who was the MD at that point, who basically said, yes, you can come and have a trial, but, you know, we're not going to pay you anything. He's still one of my friends now.
Oh, really?
Facebook in particular. I still refer to him as boss. And I said, no. I said, I'll tell you what, I'll take no basic but a higher commission. And I earned more doing it that way in the first 3 months than I would have done the right way.
Fantastic.
So, yeah, we still have a giggle now.
Yeah.
And I still challenge him on certain... I think he misses a complete trick with certain sales things, which I still tell him now. But it was a really good into the industry. And I learned a lot about the people. Not enough about the machinery from my boss, Derek, but I did from my customers. Because, of course, being a young female, not looking like the back end of a bus back then, I only had to walk up to a factory and it was, yes, love, where can I take you, love? I'll take you to see the MD, love. It's not a problem. And it was really good fun. I really enjoyed it. But I learned very quickly, sort of, thanks to those wonderful people within the industry teaching me that my target customer were injection moulding companies, because they bought 8 clamps in a row, not a milling machine that took 2.
Yep.
And then I found that, if they wanted to do even quicker tool changes, they wanted really 36. So I set them up on like direct debits. So they ordered so many a month. So it was really good. And it was sort of my first real foray into learning what works well in terms of relationships.
Okay.
And I think that's the one thing that I would say I've carried through my career.
Yeah, that's important.
Yeah.
Wherever you go. Just before we go through the career, just on childhood, do you have a favourite memory?
Wentworth Park, walking through Wentworth Park to Wentworth Woodhouse. My mum and my stepdad taking me to Fox House on a weekend.
What was Fox House?
It's basically the top end of sort of Sheffield, near Gringleford. And basically it's this beautiful little stream that runs through gorgeous countryside. And we used to build dams and then be able to sort of not swim, but have 2 strokes in the little dam in the stream and have a picnic. And before my mum met my stepdad, we'd go on the bus, which was 3 buses. Took us over an hour and a half to get there. And she'd take her old woman trolley with soggy salad sarnies, warm tins of pop, as we called it back then. And it's just spending the day there. And then, of course, when Mum met John, who I used to been caring for, then we had a car, so we got there a lot quicker. But yeah, that's where I've scattered their ashes. And I'll be heading back next month to celebrate their 40th wedding anniversary.
Oh, amazing.
So it's our family place.
It's a special memory.
Yeah.
Could you describe Andrea Wilson in 3 words?
Oh.
So I've got 3 words that I've written.
Passionate, loyal, honest.
Don't know mine.
Go on.
Passionate.
Okay.
Inspiring.
Oh, okay.
And warm.
Okay, yeah, thank you.
Yeah.
I'll take those.
Am I right?
Yeah, absolutely. I think over the years, very much early in my career, you were seen to be soft if you brought your feminine traits into work. And for a little while I listened, and for a little while I agreed. And then I realised no, because my values are my values and I can't go against my values, and every time I try to, it makes me feel really ill. And yes, one of my values is how I care for people, how I try to help people, to the detriment of myself and those around me at times. My husband these days he's desperate for me to stop, and tells me, at certain points I have to not. But I just think there were so many times in my childhood and in my early life and at various points in my adult life, if there'd have been somebody like me around me, it would have been a lot easier.
Mm-hmm.
And if I can do that for somebody else, then that makes me feel good.
So who are you doing it for? Or do you not know yet?
What now? Who am I helping? Oh, a fair few people. But I'm not going to say, because that's not fair on them. But I think, we've always joked, particularly at work. It's not so much now, because I think our team are sort of getting older now. But certainly when we had a lot of younger people, I mean, don't get me wrong, we've still got quite a low average age. But it's always been like, when Manufacturing Advisory Service came out, we used to say I would tattoo it on my forehead because it was Manufacturing Advisory Service, because I used to be the unofficial advice line for everybody sort of around us on manufacturing excellence clubs and stuff. Then Mortgage Advice Service, Marital Advice Service, Money Advice Service. But like I say, it just makes me feel good. I'm a big believer in karma.
Yep.
And I don't know if you've ever watched the movie Pay It Forward.
No.
Watch it. It's an amazing movie. It speaks volumes as to how very little things can have major impacts on people. So yeah, I'd agree with the.
Okay. So career then.
Yep.
Step into manufacturing was, you've already
Lenskers.
said. Yep.
Yeah.
Clamps.
Yeah,
Yep.
and then basically one of my customers asked me out,
Okay.
which 5 or 6 of us were all supposed to be meeting at the Coral Snooker Club in Luton. Yes, Steve from Pact, you didn't turn up, you bugger. And basically I moved down here 2 months later, carried on my old job, and Colin and I basically ended up working together about 4 months after that, because he was running Honall as it was then and never coming home. I was homesick because I was 2.5 hours from home.
Mm-hmm.
No friends, didn't know anybody, didn't have anybody. Working from home when you're in that position can be quite isolating.
Yep.
And this is long before COVID.
Mm-hmm.
Just simply didn't have anyone down here. So I was like, why can't you come home? Because when I finish on machines, I have to do paperwork. So I started going in an afternoon to help, and then not escaped for 30 years. So Colin and I ran the business together for 20 years as husband and wife. We then separated and divorced. We still run the business together today.
Amazing.
So.
Okay. In them 30 years, what's been the biggest achievement?
Okay, so when I left college and wanted to go to university, my brother worked for British Steel.
Mm-hmm.
And basically, I applied for a graduate apprenticeship or whatever it was called back then. But effectively, they'd sponsor me to go to uni. And I was so desperate for the job. I really wanted that job. It was something that interested me, and I got to go to uni and I didn't get a lot of debt. And I could afford it. My biggest achievement is in 30 years, Honall is still going. We've never made anybody redundant. We've never put anybody on short time. Nobody's ever had less than their standard basic working week in their pay packet. And even if they painted walls, they all had something to do at every single point. And even through furlough, we paid 100%.
Amazing.
So British Steel can't say that, and they turn me down. Sorry, that sounds really bad.
No, it doesn't.
But that for me is my biggest achievement. When I take somebody on, I make them a promise that I will do every single thing in my power to commit to them and to their lives, their careers, their mortgages.
Mm-hmm.
Because giving someone that security is everything.
Yeah, it's something that I worry about actually as a business owner now, that we've just sort of got to that step where we know the orders are coming in, that I can take my wage now. Yeah. To go to the next step and to have responsibility of people's mortgages and bills, and that's really scary.
It is. It's
to
terrifying.
take that step. Yeah. Sometimes I think, do I just not bother? Do I wait until there's so much money that it's easy to do, but then it's at the detriment of the growth?
Okay. If you're asking for my opinion, depends on if you have young family.
Mm-hmm.
If you have a young family, focus on building a life and your career helps support it.
Yep.
If you're still very much career focused without that young family, you can afford to take that risk right now.
Mm-hmm.
But there's a very fine balance, because when you do start employing people and you take those responsibilities, it's not that you mean to come away from your other responsibilities, but the worries take over.
Yeah.
And it changes who you are.
Yeah.
I always remember a guy who had worked for a customer, set up on his own with his brother. He shall remain nameless because what he chooses and chose to do is down to him. But he asked me the same question. I just said, don't let ego drive the business. Let what you want from it drive the business. Because it's very easy to go, I want to be bigger, I want to be better. I want to employ 30, 40, 50 people. And I do think, and this is I'll probably get battered for sexist comments, but I'm not one of these that sort of says, we must have International Women's Day. I think we should have International Everybody's Day, because we should all celebrate each other and anybody who adds value to what we do and how we do it. But I do think quite often the most successful businesses I see is where they are run by women, and it's not because women are necessarily better, but it's not driven by ego.
Yeah.
It's driven by wanting to provide that very best service or that very best product, but with everything else taken into account. Whereas I do find that quite often very male-dominated businesses, they've got to be bigger, they've got to be better, you know. And for me, it's all about bottom line. You know, there's no point employing 500 people and basically being a bit like the round tables I sit on sometimes at the manufacturing boards, and I employ 17,000 people in 16 different countries on 54 different sites. Yeah, and you make 2% net if you're lucky. What's the point?
Yep.
You know, business is there to make money and create economic growth and careers and security for people. You know, if you're playing with people's lives by simply just trying to grow for the sake of growth, then it's not worth it.
No, that's a very good answer. Thank you.
Now you've got so much to think about.
Yeah, I have. Yeah, when my wife watches this, she'll be saying, "Remember Andrea said ego." Yeah. Okay, so let's earlier in that career, and then 30 years. Mm-hmm. Can you pinpoint anything that went wrong?
Oh yeah.
How you dealt with it then versus how you would deal with it now?
Yeah. Things that went very wrong was not having any management experience to start with. Mm-hmm. There were certain people within the business that could really light my fire, and I would react badly and end up having rows and shouting at them. I think maturity changes that, but also, even though I still didn't have time to do any professional management training, I started to learn that it wasn't me they were having a go at, so therefore I didn't need to react as strongly as I was. So I needed to not take it all so personally. And I remember one of my guys who's retired, but his son still works for us, said to me, you know, Andy, at the end of the day, you can take the horse to water, you can't make it drink. You're trying to help them. If they won't help themselves, there's nothing you can do.
Yep.
And I think that's always stayed with me. I think I also, as I said earlier, sort of mentioned that for a while I believed people who told me I should be a certain way, and not let my natural character and my natural caring, mothering, nurturing sort of personality come into business, because that meant I was soft. And I think that's absolute tosh. You know, since I started speaking to people running the business, don't get me wrong, I made mistakes all through 30 years. You always do. The secret is, and I always say to my team, have you learned from it? Yeah, mm-hmm. Well, there you go.
Yeah.
Then a mistake is worth making, because if you've learned something from it, it's fine. But I do think being true to yourself means that if you make a mistake, you know how to correct it very quickly. Mm-hmm. If you make a mistake by doing something that's not natural or genuine to you and your values, you end up almost floundering. Yeah,
that being true to yourself is something that is poignant, because when I set up Engineers Insight, everything that I put out, I said would be genuine, authentic. You know, we write the newsletter, and it's about the crap that I'm dealing with that week, or the no's that I've got, and mm-hmm. and people buy into that. People, you know, you build relationships, and people see who you are as opposed to this, you know, alter ego. But sometimes it bites you. You know, I have a potential customer that said that they wouldn't work with me because my tone of voice doesn't suit their brand. Well, what do you do in that? And I took that very personally. You know, that was immediately, walls were up.
Yeah.
And I was sending this print screen to everyone in my WhatsApp, because then I wanted their feedback.
Yeah.
Do I need to change the way that I approach it? You know, should I be more, you know, curtained? Should I not hide it? You just need
to remember you cannot please all of the people.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. It took me a few days actually to get over that and think, Sodom, you know. It will come back around at some point. Yeah. They'll either move positions, and that same company will want to talk to us again.
Yeah.
It's fine. But yeah, there's that self-doubt of, am I being too authentic?
Yeah, I think it's a bit like when my hubby tells me about how I help people. There's times when I've really questioned it. Give you an example. One of my guys, his dad died. He couldn't afford to bury him, so I helped him and paid for his dad's funeral. A year or two later, he was putting in a forklift claim saying that basically he'd hurt his neck because there was a pothole we'd not fixed that he'd reported. Had all the evidence that there was no pothole reported, the pothole wasn't deep enough for him to hurt his neck, and we had it on record that he'd reported a neck problem on his medical questionnaire when he started. But when the claim came in, he was claiming for his dad to care for him. So I paid to bury his dad, but he was claiming for his dad for caring for him for 38 hours a week.
Oh my God.
So there are times when you think, am I doing is it the wrong reason to be the way I am and the person I am? But then I think to myself, if I let that one incident or all various others change me, then they've won and a lot of other people lose out.
Yes.
So
that was how I ended.
Yeah.
Because, the 40 that had said yes and that one that said no, well, if I'd have just followed that path, then I'd have upset the other 40 people and, the business wouldn't be the business. So
it is a fine balance. It's a bit like when I did the little LinkedIn training during COVID that started the campaign going. Basically, they said I needed to post more things personally about my personal life. And I was like, no, my personal life is my personal life.
Yep.
My personal life, put on Facebook. My professional life is LinkedIn, or my professional campaign, or my career, my job, and my business. And I see quite a lot of personal posts now on LinkedIn. And sometimes I do wonder, but I've only ever done 2 personal posts on LinkedIn. One, to explain that my name had changed when I got married, because I thought it looks a bit odd if you just change it and there's not really an explanation. Plus I wanted to celebrate that. And also when my stepdad and I went for our COVID jabs, because at that point there was a lot of people saying not going to, and it's everybody's own personal belief. But for me, it was important to me because I was trying to protect those vulnerable. And so we had Daddy and Daughter Day every time we went. I only put it on once.
So what's the biggest challenge you're facing at Honal?
Skills. There's nobody out there that can train in the skills that we need. The local colleges don't have the equipment that we need them to train on. They don't have the tutors that are qualified enough to train. And when they do ask us for help and advice as to how they can improve it, they don't necessarily listen.
Yep.
Prime example is the Engineering and Construction Centre in Leighton Buzzard that I helped sit on an advisory board for. And they spec'd all this nice equipment, etc., for engineering and construction, or welding as was. But they've not spec'd any inspection equipment. Well, if you're going to train how to machine, you need to train how to inspect, because otherwise you don't know what your machining is correct. And even now, 5 years later, there's no engineering in there still. There's colleges that have got thousands, tens of thousands of pounds of equipment under blankets because they're saying we can't use them because they're not the controls our local businesses want us to train on. Well, then donate them to local businesses.
Yeah.
Let people like Bedford CNC have it, who's got his nice factory and has got some spare space. Let him use it. You could even speak to him then about potentially sending students down
of course,
to him.
Yeah.
And he could have sort of apprentices on day release or whatever using their machine.
Well, now it's T-levels. They've got to do 300 hours at a workplace.
An engineering T-level is less hours in the workplace than a care T-level. I mean, how useless is that? So for me, I just think, we are like most businesses, the lads we've had, because we have a lot of long-serving staff, and I mean a lot. Generally, if people tend to stay a year, they tend to stay forever. So the majority of our guys have got 15, 20, 25, 30 and up to 34 years service. It's costing me a fortune because every 5 years they get a bonus and a bottle. And we're having lots of them. But
that's good though.
It's great.
Fantastic.
And it's great for retention. It's great to show how loyal they are to the business, and it's a good testament to how the business runs and operates. But it is very difficult because quite often they can forget what it's like out there in the big wide world. They're not necessarily as willing to train others because they're worried about their own job, and it's trying to get that message across that that's not going to impact it.
Yep.
and quite often they don't want to train youngsters because they're worried that that training will just be lost because the youngster will disappear off. So it's difficult trying to sort of strike that balance and not necessarily force them, but encourage them and inspire them to sort of pass on that knowledge, because we can't get it externally. So for me, one of the things that I write about a lot on LinkedIn is this training and development tax credit. If I could take some of that money that the government are giving to colleges who are not using it for the purpose it's meant for in explicit terms, and that's not me having a go at all colleges. There's a lot of good technical training centres out there, but generally the further education colleges it's a lot easier for them. They get exactly the same amount of budget and ticks running courses that do not need capital investment. But if we could actually have some of that funding put directly to employers under a training and development tax credit scheme, so we could effectively hire someone completely unskilled off the street and say, right, we're going to teach you engineering in the next 3 years.
Yep.
Do you want to do it? Oh, God, yeah. Do you want the chance? Yes. Right, come on in. And we could claim a proportion of their wages. We could claim a proportion of the materials, the tooling. And the skills that are only relevant to our business is a smaller percentage. Skills that are generic and they could transfer elsewhere, a higher percentage. You know, they could do everything from goods in to maintenance to cleaning to wrapping, packing, dispatch, all sort of transferable skills. Deep hole boring, deep hole drilling, we can claim a smaller percentage. We could transform the skills landscape in 3 years if every business had that opportunity. And we don't need any colleges. We don't need any multi-billion investments. We just need a credit against a corporation tax.
Okay. And is that something that you're putting forward as part of this Minister for Manufacturing campaign, or is it completely separate?
It's a part of it. It wasn't my idea originally. It was a chap who runs NEPA's, the clothing company up Yorkshire.
Okay.
He originally mentioned it at a Make UK conference years ago. But I think it's such a great idea, and a lot of other people are on board, but they're calling it all slightly different things. But I think for me, T&D tax credit sort of fits with the R&D tax credit once we get rid of this supposed SME fraud that the government claim that we're all doing, which is all absolute tosh. If we were clever enough to defraud the R&D tax credit system, we wouldn't be hiring consultants to do it for us, would we? So yeah, it's part of it, but it's generally part of an overall strategy of just trying to get government to A, listen to SMEs, B, stop wasting millions and millions to the point of billions of pounds in levels of administration and consultants who in many cases do a good job, but in a lot of cases don't, and start bringing some accountability into what's done and how and why in terms of the support landscape. So
let's talk about Minister for Manufacturing then, because you're extremely popular on LinkedIn these days, as we always joke about. Talk us through where the idea came from, you know, the journey to now.
The two basic premises I've been talking about for probably 20 years. But I think I actually brought it up in public for the first time maybe 12, 13 years ago. I'd spoken about it, funnily enough, with Dave Tudor, who was the editor, or is the editor of PS, and basically I sort of had this conversation, and then I went to the Make UK conference, or EEF conference, whichever it was at that point. And Vince Cable stood up there telling us all what a great job he's doing. So I sort of raised the question and went, do you not think with an industry as critical as ours, with the revenue it generates, etc., that we deserve a Minister for Manufacturing? No, I think we're doing a good enough job as we are, don't you? And I went, no, that's why I'm asking the question. He moved on and, sideswiped, wouldn't speak to me afterwards. Completely ignored me at the next Make UK dinner that we had. And so it was sort of something in the back of my head. But I've always had this thing, which is a little bit idealistic, I know, a little bit, people will say. Our political system frustrates the hell out of me, that we have people running departments and sectors and industries who have absolutely no knowledge or desire or passion. They basically given a title and stuck in a job. So you can have somebody running and making decisions about our entire education policy who's never actually stepped foot in a school other than to study.
Yep.
And I don't think it should also be by political affiliation either. It should be who is best for the job.
Yep.
Because if we all ran our businesses the way they run our politics and our policy setting system, we would all be bankrupt and the country would have disappeared long ago. So I think it came from that. And then during COVID, as much as we worked every single day throughout and had nobody sort of locked down as such, because of the parts we supply and what we do, we did have a little bit of extra time because a lot of our customers did get a little bit confused with Boris's message and did shut for a period. So I did a little bit of LinkedIn training with Steve from Finally Agency, and he sort of said, have you got anything that you're really passionate about that you could post about? Lots. It's like, yeah, but something that will speak to other people, huh? Well, yeah, I've always wanted to sort of say that we need our own dedicated minister or representative. And I've always said all along, Minister for Manufacturing is the headline of the campaign because you can't keep changing it.
Yeah.
If you keep changing it, people won't recognise it. But I honestly don't give a damn, to not use any language, what this person is called, what position they hold, or, whether it's political or non-political. I just want somebody within government who is actually going to start asking the right questions about what this industry needs, how it's actually going to start progressing, have a strategy, that we have a roadmap so that all these individual knee-jerk reaction policy decisions that are made, somebody actually sits there and goes, but you over there, that's going to impact this one over here. And guess what? That one over there will work against this one for engineering, but for manufacturing or international, reshoring, it will do X, Y, Z. And somebody's just going to look at it as what it is, which is this entire. You've got to look at it at the security of the UK supply chain. Mm-hmm. It's an entire planet on its own, and people keep making decisions as though it's one house on that planet. Mm-hmm. And that needs to stop. So Jonathan Dudley at Crowe says Secretary of State. Okay, yeah. Initially, it started as a Commissioner for Manufacturing. Bayes, or a contact within Bayes, said you've got more chance with a minister, so we changed it to a minister. Make UK, after 2 years of the campaign, then brought the suggestion of a Commissioner for Manufacturing into one of their strategic documents about, I think that one was the Roadmap for Manufacturing. I've forgotten the title now because they do a lot of really good reports. Mm. But that one was the first one where they'd actually brought in this Commissioner for Manufacturing.
So were you part of that?
No, they didn't.
It was separate.
They didn't mention that they were going to be including it in there.
Okay.
But that's fine. Again, people sort of say to me, because on LinkedIn over the last year or two in particular, a number of people have tried to start the same campaign, but almost sort of saying it's theirs, and people message me and go, have you seen this? Look what they're trying to do. I don't care. Mm-hmm. As long as we get the outcome, I'm not doing this for personal benefit. I don't get paid.
Yep.
What Sam and I are trying to do with this Wikipedia for manufacturing, there's a few people who've added ideas about how we can monetize it. I don't want that. This is going to be a free resource that, all it will do is link to everybody else's resource. I don't want anybody having sponsorship. This is not what it's about. It's about bringing the industry together. It's about getting the right decisions made by the right people who are informed and experienced and passionate, and then basically giving all the small businesses, like we were when I met Colin in the first early days. He was a brilliant engineer, he still is, but he didn't have time to look for funding. He didn't have time to look for what help was there or what he could offer his team. He was too busy getting the job done, and that's what most owner-managers are. And we need to give them that resource. And if the government won't do it, then me and Sam are going to try. With a few partners sort of along the way in their own specialisms, like Finally Agency were brilliant. They did the Support UK manufacturing website for me. I didn't feel I could go to them with this one because they've already done so much and they've not charged. They've been brilliant because they want to promote the industry. But, hopefully all these people will get on board with it and they'll sort of feed into it, so that we can build something that's, it won't be perfect, but it'll be a lot better than what we've got.
So what's the latest update with the campaign?
Tomorrow, based on some figures Jordan Dudley has sent me on how many reactions and comments and shares the posts are getting, because I've got to be honest, I really don't have time to do them, because, you know, I run a business, I run the campaign. I'm still trying to help a few other people and businesses, and still try and be a STEM ambassador and sit on the Ingenuity board and a few other bits. So I don't have time to sort of do all the, oh, I got looked at by these people this week. But thankfully Jordan did. And based on his comments, he's suggesting we try the petition again, which I will word differently, because I do think also minister puts a lot of people off because they don't have any belief in our current ministers.
Yeah.
So I'm going to sort of find a terminology to rewrite it if people think that this is the way to go, and try the petition again. So we need 10,000 for it to be raised, and I think 100,000 for it to be debated. Based on Jordan's, what he calls conservative figures, on average he thinks we're getting about 60 to 100,000 people sort of either seeing or interacting with the post, which is quite astounding, quite scary. It's going to make me think harder about how I write these and not go, oh my God, it's been a really bad week. It's 8:30 on a Thursday and I've not written my post yet, which I'm trying to get better at. But some weeks, you know, when you're running a business.
Maybe it's that authenticity thing.
Yeah.
That's why people relate to you. It's not pre-planned. It's you being you and your passion comes across. Yeah.
If it was fully me, though, there'd be a lot more swear words.
Yeah, I have the same issue with LinkedIn. Yeah.
But, you know.
I accidentally used sh*t once, and that was the comment that this potential customer said. They didn't like.
Yeah. Yes. That's why when people are very, very sweet and very kind, and I really, really do appreciate how much they sort of say, you ought to be the minister of my country. And I'm like, no, I cannot be that polite for that long. I cannot work against my values.
This is my concern, actually. Not about the campaign, I'm totally important, don't worry. About whoever it is, because the people that we deal with day to day are your run-of-the-mill, down-to-earth people, right?
Yeah.
They don't fit the mould.
No.
Which is the concern, that you go the other end and you go for a politician that will not connect with anyone.
Yeah.
I don't know personally a person that sits in the middle. I certainly wouldn't sit in the middle.
I've met a few who I think can do both. But we would need it to be as I sort of said in either last week or the week before's post, because sometimes they do blend. When they've recruited for the chair of the transport or highways or whatever.
Yes.
If it's a recruited post, I think we've got a chance. Mm-hmm. Because you can pick someone who's worked their way up and potentially done acquisitions, but also still connects with the SMEs because they're part of their supply chain. You know, these people that are career managers are never going to be able to relate. Because trust me, I see it quite often sitting around these various panels for the last 27 years. And we're still having the same conversations, you know. What were we? Automotive Academy, National Skills Academy for Manufacturing, Skills Funding Agency, SEMTA, all of them. And at most times you've got people, unfortunately, who, if they just spend a day down on a shop floor in an SME with an owner manager or with the lads running the machines or girls running the machines, they'd have a totally different take on what they're then feeding back into government or what they're feeding back into these skills policy setting quongos. Mm-hmm. And just drives me nuts. Like I say, 27 years. And I did get told by, what was his name? Anyway, somebody at Cranfield, you're giving, Andy, you're giving. You know, your head, it's brick wall. There's no point. You will give in. Every time now when somebody says that, I sort of go, it's a bit bruised, it's a bit battered and it's a bit scraped, but it's still there and it's still banging on that wall.
Does it make you drive forward? that comment, or do you just let it go?
No, the biggest driver is I'm quite opinionated about things that I don't feel are right. I don't feel I'm entitled to have an opinion unless I'm willing to try and change it. That's what drives. Because I sit and listen to people whinge all the time. But the minute you ask them to stick their head above the parapet,
yep,
they're gone.
Yep.
You know, and we all have that one person at work. We all have that one person who we work with or have worked with, who will always be negative, who will always whinge and moan.
Mm-hmm.
But when you give them the options of what to do to change it, they just sort of disappear and say, oh, well, it'll never change anyway. Well, no, it won't unless you try and change it or help to change it
mm-hmm.
or work with us to change it, you know. And so, you know, if you're not going to get out there and do something to change it, shut up.
Yep, I totally agree. Yeah.
So that's what drives me. Not people saying you'll never succeed. Although I do remember my A-level tutor telling me I'd never pass my A-levels because I worked too hard. I had too many part-time jobs. I drove a car. I drank. I smoked. How dare you have a life and study? You know, and if I didn't drink, smoke, and drive a car, then basically I wouldn't need to work and I could study full-time. Well, no, I still needed to help my parents and contribute to the household. And because I did that as well as all the other things, I could smoke, drink, drive a car. So that's what drives, I think, is wanting to make sure. Even now, people giggle at me because even now my food cupboards and my larder still have what my mum taught me. Always make sure you've got 4 weeks' food in the cupboard in case you have a tough time. And I'm, touch wood, very lucky. I've not had a tough time for a long time. But knowing there was no food in the cupboard reminds you to never take that food for granted.
Yeah.
So.
Okay. Skill shortages.
Mm-hmm.
I ask every guest, imagine you're in front of a classroom of students.
Yeah.
What advice would you give them?
It's slightly different. It's easy to give advice, but unless they know what's out there, you're giving them advice to sort of go look for something they don't know about.
Mm-hmm.
So I think the first thing I would say is, first of all, schools need to open doors and make it easier for businesses to go speak to students.
Yep.
And I do think the best format I've ever seen is speed dating,
mm-hmm.
where basically students go to all these different businesses in one hall rather than these formal careers days, because people get to ask the questions. That needs to happen more often. Once you've done that, then, for example, the thing I've always found worked for me as a sort of doing the STEM stuff was asking the questions of what they enjoy doing. So everybody's sort of sitting there. I stand at the front and say, okay, who likes maths? Me. Okay, accountant or, you know, accounts manager within engineering and manufacturing. How much can you earn? I don't know. Well, you know, between £50,000, £100,000 a year, £1,000 to £2,000 a week. You know, and they're like, what? Yeah, £200 to £400 per day.
Mm-hmm.
Really? Who likes checking other people's work when the teacher's writing on the blackboard or, you know, on the PC and they've got spelling mistakes? Who always picks it up? Me. Well, guess what? You could earn 50 to 70 grand doing contract review, simply checking the detail of contracts coming in and picking up anybody else's mistakes. Really? Yeah, and put it into pounds for weeks, pounds for days. You know, who likes shopping? You know, you can shop for a living. Be a buyer. You're fighting with people for the best price. You're negotiating, you know, and you're spending money on a daily basis. And guess what? You're going to earn 50 grand to do it. That basically sort of opens their eyes to what they can do. Then the advice is do what you have an interest in. Do what makes you smile, because you will always be better at it, but learn every aspect of that job and that company. Because I do believe my strength over this last 30 years has been the fact that I did everything from delivering the bits, running the machines, doing the accounts, you know, doing the marketing, making complete cock-ups, designing a brochure that I then never wanted to give to anybody because it was horrible by the time I'd done it. But you learn from that. And I think learning everybody else's, there's certain meetings we have now, and I'll sort of go, look, I know this is a girly way of saying it, but what about if we did this? And it might be really stupid as an idea to fix a problem on a machine or a shop floor. But one of the engineers then goes, actually, yeah, think about that. If you turn it to this, it could do that.
Yeah.
So it's that trying to learn as much as you can about what you do and what the business does, every role that it does, because then you have a much greater understanding of everybody else's role, and you're much more aware of how your role impacts them, so it makes you do your role better.
Yep.
And if you go home every day knowing you've done your absolute best, you'll never fail. So
the episode before this one was with Angela Lawler, Marvellous Manufacturing, and she spoke similarly about when she goes into schools, and I asked her, what do you talk to the kids about? And she said, I show them, you know, I talk about without manufacturing you wouldn't have hair products or a hairdryer or something relatable. And then she said about a slide that she shows them about if you were building a biscuit factory, how many packets of biscuits would you need to produce to cover the cost of the wages and the lights and the energy bills or whatever it is. And it's the same as your example. It's relatable. It's something that the kids can say, well, yeah, I do enjoy this, or that is a product that I use every day. And then they understand what manufacturing is. Yeah. Right now, it's sort of, it feels like we're just throwing things at the wall.
Yeah, and this is the thing. We need to put it into terms that are understandable. So, you know, who's a Lego freak? Who loves building things? You know, who always takes things apart when it's broken?
Yep.
You know, if your mum breaks something, you know, who's the first one to go grab it and try and fix it? Shopping, you know, maths, you know, like I said, contract review, checking other people's work, graphic design, sketching, you know. Who wants to sort of, you know, who says, Mum, when you move that pan 3 times, you've moved it twice more than you need to do. You know, continuous improvement manager, you know, lean manufacturing.
Yep.
And you've got to start showing and highlighting in those terms of the day-to-day activities. And funnily enough, I post on Thursdays for the campaign, but Tuesdays are like the Honall posts. And I try and write blogs for the Honall stuff, which appeal and educate sort of even people that are not necessarily in the industry, but maybe supporting, like recruiters or, you know, service providers, etc. And one of the blog posts that sort of I was working on today or yesterday and finished it today, it was yet again about how engineering's all around you. And I've sort of said, actually, I think what we need to do is take this one, do another 3 or 4 along this sort of line, and do it as a series. Because one of my favourite movies, I love movies, but one of my favourite movies is August Rush. And again, if you've never seen it, absolutely amazing. It's about a musical prodigy. Really beautiful love story also in the background. But the music in it is tremendous. But I even had August Symphony as my wedding march going into church. So that'll tell you how much I love that movie. But he says the end closing statement is music is all around us. You just have to hear it. Mm-hmm. And engineering's all around us. You just have to see it.
Yep.
And that's what we need to show.
I talk to a lot of people about skill shortages or about their experiences, the challenges they've faced. And it shows probably to the viewers that don't know you already how passionate you really are, how inspiring you are as a person in UK manufacturing. No, don't be silly. No, I wouldn't say that on camera.
I am, I'm a nag. I don't mind. It makes things better.
I want to pick your brains on leadership.
Okay.
Before we close. So when you joined Honall, you'd never been a boss, you'd never been a manager. How did you deal with it? How did you deal with taking on a team of people?
God, well, it didn't help because everybody thought I was just the boss's girlfriend. And of course, the fact I was young and didn't look like the back end of a bus also didn't help because they thought I didn't have a brain. So it took a lot of showing how much I could do, how much I was willing to do, how I was willing to muck in. You know, jumping in the van at 3 a.m. to deliver bits, which back then was to Benetton F1. You know, picking up fish and chips for the guys while they were working through the night to get the F1 team stuff done. It did take a long time for that. I think one of the things that I do love, and I would recommend it to any girls or women considering going into manufacturing, I absolutely love being the minority in engineering and manufacturing. It brings such benefits and such strengths. And you're working with absolutely brilliant people, and quite often engineers' brains work much differently to what I class as normal people. And I can say that, you know, I've been married to 2. But being able to work in an environment that you would say is not a natural environment allows you an opportunity to flourish in ways that you don't expect. And I think for me, that's been one of the biggest gifts, particularly being technical. So standing on an exhibition stand and people come up and sort of go, you know, oh, hello, so nice to meet you, blah, blah, blah. Like, can I speak to so-and-so, you know, the technical guy? I'm like, yeah, you can talk to me. But I'm in a dress, you know. The hair back then was all nicely done, you know, high heels. And then being able to stand there and go, look, we can drill up to 200 mil diameter, turn up to 540 diameter within, you know, plus or minus 50 micron. We can do this, do that. And they sit there and they sort of, oh, really, what? You know? And I love that. I love that reaction. Yeah. I love shocking people who have outdated opinions. And for me, that's part of the fun. I don't take it offensively when people say, no, honestly, can I speak to someone technical? And I go, if you want to speak to one of the chaps, then you'll get 3 days to get your quote. If you want to speak to me, you can have your quote in the next hour. Your choice. And I enjoy that, and I think it's fun, and I think people remember and they engage because of that. So I think, as much as it's one of the biggest challenges, and I remember in the early days feeling very awkward at engineering dinners when you're in very posh frocks, and you're probably one of 5 women in a room of 500, and it was more difficult then. Mm-hmm. It's changed dramatically now. It really has. And I think people who speak about we must get more women into manufacturing forget how far we've come, and forget that we need to focus on getting more talent into manufacturing. Yep. It's not just about attracting women. It's not just about attracting youth. It's about attracting talent. It's about attracting different perspectives. I pride myself on, you know, some of the people I've hired over the years. I've hired a 60-odd-year-old who said, but you won't want me. And I went, of course I do. And he stayed for 12 years. Wow. You know, because you've just got to open your mind to it. Mm-hmm.
So when you're building them teams, you're hiring people. Is there something you're looking for from them?
Yeah, definitely.
What?
I always say attitude and aptitude, everything else can be taught. Because if they fit in and they want to learn and they want to work hard, there's nothing you can't teach them. Mm-hmm. Because they might not excel at what you initially hired them for. Yeah. But they might excel at something else. Most of the people, Victoria, who works really closely with me, she came in as an accounts assistant. She's dyslexic. Her filing was horrendous. We moved her to sort of statistical analysis, KPIs, business intelligence. She's absolutely brilliant. Mm. You know, she also took over running the progress, you know, and dealing with the customer. She's absolutely amazing. But, you know, trying to do the admin and filing my purchase invoices was fun trying to find them later. You know, Lisa sort of came in, sort of doing, again, secretarial, but she absolutely loves HR, health and safety. Jen, again, came in admin-wise. She's now running production with Scott. Andy, who I'm hoping to tempt back. He left thinking grass was greener. Hopefully he's coming back. I'll hopefully have an answer tomorrow. He came in for a CNC turner's job, but because of what his CV said and the things he said he liked doing, I was like, with your levels of OCD, which I admit I have OCD, have you ever thought about contract review? Because you'd just be amazing at checking that detail between the order and the drawing, etc. And then if there's an issue, you can fix it.
Yep.
Okay, wow. You know, I'm hoping now he'll come back on technical sales. But yeah, I think it's not necessarily that, it's the personality. And that's why I think we have people who stay so long.
Yes.
You know, I'm not allowed to say it on here probably, but I always say, don't last long in our place because they don't fit in. So you have to have a certain level. I remember when Scott was being pitched to me for my production manager, they said to me, he's really passionate, he's got OCD, he takes it really personally, and he doesn't react very well if you tell him he's done it wrong. And I went, tick, 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 bring him in, you know? Because for me, those characteristics, I want people to care about what we do.
Yeah.
Honal, we've always said, and it goes back to my point about ego. Our motto or our vision and mission is to be the best, not the biggest. You know,
Yeah.
And if you've got people who care and take it personally and want to do the very best, you will always get the very best.
Brilliant. Okay, let's close then. So if you were sat here asking you the question, what question should I have asked you? What do you think the viewers would like to know?
Maybe what's next, but I can't answer that right now.
Glad I didn't ask that on them.
You know, do I want to keep doing what I'm doing? Yes. Do I want to see a real step change in how manufacturing and engineering is perceived? Yes. Do I want okay, there's the question. What would you say to other engineering and manufacturing businesses in the UK to get them to help themselves to change things as well? And it would be, start shouting about what you do. Hence the hashtag shout about UKMFG. Because we are engineers, not marketeers. But we're hidden. We're hidden on industrial estates. We're hidden down side streets. We're hidden out of view. And we have to start being more visible about what we do. We have to start talking about what we do more. We have to start getting people to recognise what we do, the value we add. But unless everybody plays their part in it, we're going to be a very few small, quiet voices.
Yeah.
And, you know, one of my little things is, you know, together we're louder, together we're stronger. And I think one of the things that Sam's doing a really good job with on Connex is getting that connection and that collaboration, and the amount of people who've helped each other with business issues where it could potentially be someone who's a competitor, but you've helped regardless. And that's what we pride ourselves, we've always done. You know, we've got a couple of companies who are direct competitors to us, and if it's work that's better suited to them, we don't take it on and sub it. We give you straight to them because we trust that our customers will come back to us for the bits that suit us better.
Yeah.
We all need to do more because otherwise we will all struggle. So we all need to do more. So it doesn't take much. It doesn't take much. It just takes having that conversation down the pub when somebody says, what do you do? Don't just say, oh, I'm in engineering. Well, I actually make parts for Ferrari, or I make parts for, you know, Zanussi washing machines. And those parts, without those parts, your washing machine will fall apart and burn your clothes. I don't know. But, you know, let's make what we do more visible. So that I guess that's the question is, what can we all do as engineering companies or manufacturers to help ourselves? That's it.
Do you consider yourself successful?
Yes, but not in what I would call the sort of usual sense. I think, and it's funny, I spoke to Jo Britton, who's doing some coaching for me, or I'm having her coach me at the minute for a few things. And I consider myself successful because people think that my history, my background, my childhood, etc., defines me, and therefore I should deal with it. And it's no, I am who I am because of everything that happened throughout my entire life. And I'm actually really proud of the person I am. And I've done pretty well. So I consider myself a success for that reason. Because it's easy to let something define you, and it's even easier for you to use something as an excuse as to why you can't do or be or achieve. Well, there are no excuses. You've just got to want it enough, or work hard enough, or try enough. So, yeah, on that front, I consider myself successful because, you know, I'm fairly sane.
How much of your success would you attribute to hard work and how much to luck?
Definitely very little luck. Some of my competitors and other machining companies over the years, they've done so well and got, I know, good luck to them. I'm so pleased for them. But it's never happened to us. You know, they get donated a machine. There's the machine, and guess what? I'm going to give you a contract for 5 years for that machine. But I guess I've got to consider myself lucky in the fact that I've not had tremendously bad luck. But I certainly don't think there was really anything ever given on a plate or platter. I don't. I think it's hard work, it's hard slog, it's taking some risks, having a lot of sleepless nights, being OCD about what you do, like you say, taking things very personally can be very, very draining. But I think more than anything, it's having that resilience. You know, we all have bad days. I go home, I open a bottle of wine. I can sit there and think, oh, you know, I'm going to go work in Tesco's tomorrow. But you get up the next day and you go, how can I do it better? So.
Okay. Well, that's it. You can relax. Thank you very much.
Well.
Thank you for being on the podcast. Thank you, I suppose, on behalf of a lot of people, really. Thank you for what you're doing for industry. I'm sure, you know, I've already said it in this podcast, but it definitely comes across how passionate you are, and inspiring. Not just, you know, the people that we speak to are obviously very inspiring for young people watching this, but also people in industry. You know, you in particular, I'm sure will be inspiring a lot of people around you, whether you take that on board or not.
I don't really see myself as inspiring. I just do what I do and hope it helps. Really.
That's a good place to leave it then.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you.